thank you very much indeed, everyone. We are starting shortly, and it's been amazing. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is obviously try to put a hi in the Q&A. Ralph from Ireland, Ralph Montague from Ireland is with us today. I'm super excited. I'm actually, humble, honored to have Ralph and all of you as well today. So thank you for being here. We've got 3 minutes to go. I just want to play a quick video to all of you as we kickstart our webinar. I'm super excited for the webinar today. So much to learn. Already 100 of you are here. So thank you for being here. While we're waiting for 3 minutes, I just want to share a nice video with you as we go through. So let me just make sure I've got the sound and the screen okay, as well as the screen. So let me just go back to screen 1. And if you can see my screen and the sound, please just give me a buzz. Thank you.
Imagine if you could build the best building in the world. Where would you start? To build something truly groundbreaking, you need to start with a very special place. A place with history and a bright future. You'll need to invest in people to bring the best and brightest into one place. You should start with an incredible vision of what could be. It's important to know exactly where to start and what you'll need to get your vision moving. A vision of this complexity will need many clever minds to realize, many disciplines to contribute along the way. You'll need a true understanding of what is really needed and an amazing design which answers and surpasses those needs. The best tools available and practitioners who can put them to work are the essence of an exemplary building. You'll need an inspiring place to nurture these ideas and to help the vision grow into a reality. A big room full of even bigger ideas. Sharing and learning from each other is vital if you're to realize your dream. Everyone who wants to see this building grow will need to be part of a strong collaborative effort to create a new way forward in building, design and construction. Experiment, prototype, look at things from every angle. Does it fit better here or there? How will this function 50 years from now? Is this building efficient? Will it be warm when we need it and cool when we don't? Before the first stone is laid, every single detail should be resolved. You'll need to build it more than once. Pioneer a new approach to building modelling, and if the tools you need don't yet exist, create them. Your design and ideas for the perfect building should be as flexible and accommodating as the building you strive to make. Understanding every detail and knowing where all the pieces fit is the key to realising your dream and seeing the vision turned into a reality. Orchestrating the complex process of blending steel, glass and concrete with wood, lights and fresh air to deliver the vision of the best building in the world is no mean feat. Meticulous planning and rigorous attention to detail will be the beating heart of this achievement. Only by integrating valid building data captured throughout the construction process can you make a cost-effective and lean building, one which will stand the test of time. This place will operate smoothly, have minimal impact on our environment, and be a flexible, connected, comfortable place where you can really concentrate on your performance.
Okay, so I'm just making sure I switch screen and go back to stop screen as well. Yeah. Ralph, can we have you for 1 minute just to meet the participant before I really start the webinar? Hi everyone, can you put your hands up for Ralph? Everyone, thank you for being here. Of course, hugely appreciated. I've got my colleague Dagson as well in the back of the screen to help us out as well. Thank you very much indeed. There was 500 of you registered for the event today, so I can't really thank everybody enough for this event today. Raf, quickly before I introduce you, thank you first of all from Ireland to obviously to be with us today, being hosted from Mauritius, and also lots of colleagues around the world. Raf, we can't thank you enough for your time, effort, and I know you're a massive role model for the digital industry. Raf, quickly, a quick hello and what are we expecting today?
Hi everyone, and thank you, Anil, for putting this on. I really appreciate the effort you put in as well. Yeah, very excited to be sharing with people today, building professionals, about technology, building information modeling. It's really the way forward. We've been operating in this space for 12 years, and just really excited to share some of that experience with people, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion and some good questions. And
okay, thank you much indeed. So Raf, if I can ask you to switch off your video, I'm just going to introduce some slides and before we really get you back on. So thank you very much indeed. Right, if you can see my, if you can see my screen, please, my slide. If you can just have thumbs up, please, or the little emoji as we start. Okay, good evening everyone from Mauritius. This is my 47th webinar CPD talk, Bim for project managers, and I'm delighted and honored to have Ralph Montague from Ireland. So Bim for project managers, and it's Ralph Montague, architect, director of ArcDox Bim consultant. So thank you again for being here. Just quickly then, quick agenda, we'll have a quick introduction, which I'll be doing housekeeping as well. We'll have a quick survey as we do, some Q&A session in between the presentation, and then some survey as well as some Q&A and conclusion. So thank you very much. It's been incredible to us to see 500 of you all over the world registered for this event. Fantastic. So I'm really, really touched by the whole thing. Thanks a ton for coming over. And also a certificate attendance will be issued. Please send me your feedback after the talk, positive, negative, as well as a request for a certificate of attendance with your name at anil@cpdtalk.com. And I'm hoping that's going to be an hour plus CPD today as well. Thank you to Ralph for giving back. So thanks a million on behalf of all of us today. So I think most of you know me, but I need just for a formality. I love construction, love learning, love sharing, love people, passionate about giving back, of course, and also almost 19 years now. So thank you again for all your support. Honor, privilege, and humble as well as we do. So, and I think it'd be good. I know most of us are from Mauritius, but there's lots of colleagues from other parts of the world. So if I can ask you to go to menti.com, menti.com, and type in the number 26482400. And I'm just going to share the screen of the share the screen now for menti.com to see where colleagues are. If you name your nickname, whatever you want to put in, and if you can just put your nickname there. So it'd be great to see where you're from. Take your time. We've got about 1 minute, so it'd be great to see anything, because it's more of a personal webinar. We like to mention people's names and take the questions from you. So everybody get a chance to get a question through. So already we've got Runa from Mauritius, Kevin from Mauritius. So lots of colleagues from Mauritius. As you can see, the blue one being most of us are from here. So please, if you can just forward that to us. Yeah, so we've got about 40 seconds. And if you can just put through. So okay, so most of you are from here. And if you can just give you 40 seconds before we complete the process. So fantastic to see you all here before we move on. I know some of you get difficulties in accessing it, but definitely put your comment in as we go through. So fantastic to see all of you connecting like that before we continue. So I'm going to move on. We've got colleagues from Ethiopia, India, South Africa. So colleagues a bit from all over the world. So fantastic to see all of you today as we move on to the next one. It's good to see everybody's name as well. I can see Amuri, he's a senior architect as well in Mauritius. So Nigeria, Atunike, good to see you. Kate from Philippines. So it's great to see all of you here around the world today to really celebrate what it's all about when it comes to coordination, collaboration, and really make things easier for all of us. I'm going to move on to the next slide quickly. Thank you everyone for being here today, hugely appreciated. I think it's good to ask you why we need BIM for project managers. I think some of you have kind of skipped through, but why do we need it? I know some of us know what BIM is, we've studied about it, but why we need BIM for project managers? And it could be anything. An architect can be a project manager, an engineer can be a project manager, a QS can be a project manager. So why do we need it? Think about it for a few seconds, and I think it'll give Ralph a bit of a more context to put in. So think about it, why do we need it before we really kicks in? So I think that's really, really important. Okay, so I'll give you 30 seconds before why do we need it? Coordination, yeah. Efficiency, fantastic. We also got visualization, yeah, keep putting them in. And we've got 30 seconds before we ready. 18 of you have actually put it in. So please put your comment in before we conclude. So coordination is the biggest one. I think we all have problem with coordination. There's collaboration coming up at the second one, and efficiency on the server. As you can see, the blue one is the biggest one at the moment, with coordination leading the way, with collaboration coming up. Also, so it'll be good to Ralph maybe to touch on that as we start. So thank you very much indeed. Keep putting the comment and I'll move on. Someone has got managing resources, effective communication, but nobody has mentioned risk. Managing risk, I think that's important as well. Oh yeah, there is risk. I apologize. I can see risk. I saw risk somewhere here. It's gone, yeah, it's moving around a bit. So I saw someone putting risk. So thank you very much indeed. Risk is very important too. And yeah, so risk is there. Here we go. Risk is coming as a big blue coming up. So coordination being the lead one, and I'll move on shortly. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to switch screen now. And just making sure, right, so just making sure we've got stop share, and just going to share that again. So fantastic, and just go back to the slide. So all right, thank you again. If you can see my slide, please, you can just give me a thumbs up as we're going at a very quick speed, as you can see. All right, so I want to just share with you the few takeaways from COVID-19, and I think it was really important to share this with you, which I was reading yesterday. And it was a takeaway from leaders in the UK talking about what are the takeaways from COVID-19. And we've got James from Bluebeam. And James goes on to say, I would say it's the development of transparency holistically across the industry. The sector we are perceived to be behind the curve with new technology, but I've seen us as an industry that's ready to adopt and adapt. We are resilient and we have amazing opportunities ahead. Next one I've got as well is from Nick Cole. We have the perfect opportunity to take that, what we have learned since March last year, and rewrite the rule book. We can tailor the experience of work to suit the individual and the work they are doing. Next one is Oliver Jones. Everything we thought was on the horizon and would be here in a little while, will be here a lot quicker than we thought. And now we know we are digitally proficient. Everything will come a lot quicker as well. Get on board now, which you are doing today. And I think Nick says, I think it's a really powerful statement. The pandemic made us appreciate that digital transformation is a wider concept than we had thought initially. And the next one down, things can be done quickly when there's motivation and pressure. The pandemic has acted as a turbocharger and the speed race is on. Let's continue to accelerate. And finally, it's more than just about building. It's about a whole range of things. It's a journey toward a digital world. So before I introduce Ralph, that was on the economists, where I showed that before. 30% of construction process is rework. 60% of construction labor effort is wasted, and I'm sure many can resonate with that. This is something I wanted to share with you, right? And this was in 1976 within the BRE, which is the Building Research Establishment, and where the arrow is pointing. In 1976, back there still, I'm talking about 26, 27 years ago now, It says about unclear, missing project information. And in this day and age, we still struggle with information. Why is that? Maybe something we need to talk about. So this is a thing I want to share the point with Ralph. Take control. This is a story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. So I think this is a really powerful one. Take control of it and make sure that we are not that somebody, everybody, anybody, and nobody. I want to just share this before finally I introduce Ralph, and I'm just going to go back, and this is Ralph company as well before I move on. So 2020 will be remembered for many, many things, as you know, and I'm just going to go back to YouTube and share that with you. All right, and if you can hear the sound as well, please make sure you let me know, and I'm just going to play the video now. Off we go. Thank you much indeed. Okay, thank you for watching now as well. And as I go back to new share, of course, thank you for this. And we move on to introduce Ralph. So thank you for being here. And next up, so this is Ralph's website. If you want to check Ralph's website in the meantime as well, it's www.arcdox.com. So again, if you want to just check out what's there, and Ralph's got some really nice surprise for you out there as well, which you will love it. So quickly, the introduction today is the success of delivering building in terms of performance outcome and infrastructure project is highly dependent on the quality of information that is produced and provided to inform and instruct the various participants in the project delivery team. Good quality information, whether it's timely, accessible, or accurate, will support outcome and performance, and poor quality information will hinder outcome and performance. Ralph goes on to say, as a project manager, we need to understand the relationship of information management with project management. That could be in terms of delivering quality, scope, time, and budget. BIM, which is Building Information Modeling and Management, is both a technology and a process for information management for building and infrastructure using the ISO 19650 standard, and need to be clearly understood by anyone engaged in the built environment, be it asset owners, architect, engineers, contractors, project managers, QSs, facility managers, and also, I think, client as well, very important there. So the presenter today is Ralph Montague. Ralph told me earlier he's not associated with the Shakespeare's. Ralph Montague is a director of ArcDox, a specialist BIM consultancy practice based in Dublin, in Ireland, providing professionally managed advice, production, support, and training services to the construction industry and property industry. A registered architect with almost 30 years of experience in managing large projects, Ralph endorses Bim as a more cost-effective and highly efficient way of producing and managing design and construction documentation and improving the building process. And finally, Ralph is a member of the National BIM Council of Ireland, a coordinator of the Construction IT Alliance BIM Group. In this role, he has been instrumental in leading the development and adoption of BIM in Ireland since 2009. As past chairman of the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland, practice subcommittee for BIM, Ralph has presented Ireland on the Architect Council of Europe, BIM working. He's also the current chair of the National Standard Authority of Ireland, Technical Mirror Committee on BIM monitoring, the work on European Committee for Standardization and International Organization for Standardization Technical Committee on BIM standard. Last but not least, Ralph is a part-time lecturer at Trinity College, Dublin School of Engineering for the postgraduate diploma in project management. Please join me in welcoming Ralph. I'm just going to stop sharing now, Ralph, and thank you for being here. And as Ralph join us in, and you can share. And I'll let you know, this is Ralph here. The picture says something different, but this is Ralph, because Ralph been in lockdown for almost a year, and you haven't had a barber since 4 months, Ralph. Is that right?
That's correct. That's why I'm looking particularly hairy. Thank you, Anil. Thanks for the great introduction, and thanks for the invitation to be here. Really appreciate it.
If you can go full slide there as well, Ralph. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to get the slides coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, is that all working?
Yeah, and just quickly, Ralph, everybody, can you have a big round of applause for Ralph, please, from Ireland today for this amazing presentation. So please, big round of applause for your emoji. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everyone, and great to be here, and look forward to sharing with you about BIM, and particularly BIM for project managers, because I think one of the things is a lot of project managers would think that BIM is something that architects and engineers do, and it's not for project managers. So I hope to give a different take on that. Anil's introduced me, so I won't go through that. I've divided this talk into 3 sections, so we can have some questions in between as well. So the first section is going to be a general discussion about information in the built environment sector. The second section will go into more detail about BIM, and then the third section will be around the importance of standards. Okay, so I want to talk about this word information, and I've taken some of these definitions about this word, you know, to give form, to resolve uncertainty, etc. It's a really important word, and just to put some context into it, and for project managers, you know, nothing that we make in the built environment sector is made without information. It's not as if you send people to a site with some materials and a building emerges. So everything that exists was made because of information, and so therefore without information there's no project. And you know, so you can conclude then, without information management you can't really have good project management. So that's my thesis, and I want to put forward to all the project managers out there. But of course, not only the project managers, anybody that's participating in the built environment as a professional, whether you're an architect, an engineer, an asset owner, a quantity surveyor, etc. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about, information and the built environment. Here's a picture of the city that I live in Dublin, in Ireland, and what you see in this picture is the built environment. It's the roadways, the waterways, the bridges, the buildings, the parks, the utility networks, everything that supports life for us in Ireland. It's incredibly important to us as a society. It's where we live, it's where we work, it's where our children go to school. You know, so the built environment obviously is important, but going back to this word information, none of this happened without information, and also this has to be maintained and operated. So that's not happening without information. So behind what you see, the physical, is information. And now we have some problems in our built environment in Ireland, which I'm sure you have in other countries around the world. The first one is the cost of construction is too high. The time it takes to build stuff takes too long. The quality is questionable. we have some safety issues on site, and people are getting hurt, some people are getting killed. And then we have a sustainability issue. Like, our built environment is responsible for about 40% of the CO2 emissions and 40% of the use of energy. And these are challenges that we are trying to address. And some of those challenges are caused by the information. So the industry traditionally was a very paper-based environment, and this picture is from a building, one of the buildings in Dublin, in fact, an office building for a client. And what you see here is what we call in Ireland the safety file, or what other people call the building logbook, or whatever the word you have in your countries. But at the end of construction, the construction team and the design team are meant to give the building owner a record of the information of how the building was produced and how it has to be maintained and operated. And typically the way that's done is everything's printed off and it's put into a BArch file, and it's put into a box and delivered to a room in the building. Of course, over time, that information gets into a terrible state, something like this. And you have to question how useful that information is. It's inaccessible. People, can they actually use it? And so that's what the topic I want to talk about is this paper versus data world. There was an excellent study done by the Boston Consulting Group in 2016. They advised us to the World Economic Forum, and they concluded in this study that the cost of working with analog information versus digital information is in the order of 13 to 21% during the design and construction stage, and 10 to 17% in the operation stage. And I thought that was really interesting, because when you talk to people about implementing digital on their projects, their immediate thought is, well, it's going to cost me more to do that. But actually, the reality, it costs you less if you do it properly, and even for the ongoing operations. And that's why we want to talk about this ISO 19650 standard, which is a standard for organizing and digitizing the information about the built environment, including BIM. So this idea of paper versus data, I think most people understand this. If you think about your bank, and I'm sure everyone on the call has a bank account, is you can get your bank statement in a printed format, and or you could get your bank statement in a digital format. It's exactly the same information. It's not as if they're creating it twice. It's most of the financial institutes use digital information now. They might still print it, but it's digital information in the background. And the difference is the paper copy can't be edited or used other than to read it with your eyes. So it is useful. I can't say it's not useful at all. It's useful as a record information, but the digital information is far more useful in that it can be analyzed, filtered, summed up with formulas, etc. So the digital information has far more use, and we understand that in other sectors, the financial sectors, etc. But obviously we need to begin to apply this thinking to our sector, which is the built environment sector. And one thing I want to put forward to everybody is this idea that if you're involved in architecture or engineering or construction, or you're actually in the information communication business. And to understand that, on the one side, everybody listening to this call has to receive information from someone that tells you what to do, and then in doing your job, you are producing information that is informing and instructing other people on what they need to do. So you're in the middle of this somewhere. On the one side, you're receiving all types of information, building regulations, the client brief, health and safety regulations, etc. And you're doing something with that. So that's your job, is you're processing it, assimilating it, etc. And then you have to do something and communicate with other people through some sort of technology, into information communication technologies. And we have a lot of technologies. So even what we're doing today, speaking, presenting, writing, drawing sketches, typing out schedules, specifications. These are the technologies that we've used in the industry for a number of years to communicate with other people. And BIM falls into this area. It's a a technology to communicate information. Okay, this brings me on to the discussion, and I like the introduction that Anil had, that the relationship of project outcomes to the quality of information.
Yeah.
So let's talk about quality of information.
Absolutely.
On the one side, if you had to draw it on a scale, on the one side you could say, well, you could have no information at all. I mean, that's unlikely, but let's just say that was the one end of the scale, is that you gave people a job to do, but you gave them no information at all. And on the other side, you could say you have complete information. Yeah. Now you might never get there either, but let's just talk about that. In the middle, you have something between poor information and good information. So poor information, I would describe as information that's unresolved, uncoordinated, incomplete, incorrect, late, inaccessible, etc. Good information, you could say, well, it's not perfect yet, but it's partially resolved, partially coordinated, it's more accurate, more correct, etc. And most projects fall somewhere in between that. And in your word bubble there in the beginning, Anil, these words came up: coordination, risk, etc. is related to where you fall in this project quality of information. Of course, the ideal is to get to fully resolved, fully coordinated, accurate, correct, on-time, accessible information, because that would provide the best results. So if you looked at the time and the cost of producing information, well, if you say 100% of the time of cost would be producing fully resolved, fully coordinated, of course, there's no cost at all if you have no information, and something in between. Okay, so there is a cost involved in producing information, and the quality of information depends on the time and cost that's put in. But what does that mean for the time and cost of actually constructing and operating buildings? So if you say the best result would come from fully resolved, fully coordinated, accurate information, so that you could say that's 100% of the cost. Well, as you move down, as the quality of the information diminishes, the cost is increasing and the time is increasing. Okay, and this brings me on to this interesting statistic that over 70% of projects end up over time and over budget. And if you're a project manager, you know that. Like, you've experienced that on all your projects. There's always problems, there's always delays, there's always cost overruns, and most of those will start with the quality of information. So that brings me on to this: what's the value of information management? Because when you talk to people about information management and information, it's like they don't really understand it as something real, whereas they do understand the physical building. But remember, as I said in the beginning, the physical building never materializes out of nothing. So information, the value of information obviously is increasing as you go up that scale of quality of information. So I think that's the first thing, is everybody should have a good feeling or understanding of the relationship between quality of information and the outcomes of projects.
And Ralph, just a quick one back on that slide quickly before we move to Q&A. Where you've got complete information, I mean, how do we achieve that in terms of human behaviors to really get to that bigger circle as opposed to the smaller circle? Before we really get to Q&A, I really want to get something out. Is that a Bim mindset? Is that a Bim culture? What is it to get to the bigger circle?
Well, it is a culture. So it's like, information is produced by people. So you hire people to produce information, and some of it's produced by designers, not all of it. Designers produce a certain level of information, which we call design intent. It describes the design intent to fabricators and contractors. Okay, the fabricators and contractors have to produce what we used to call shop drawings or fabrication drawings to actually execute the work on site. So when I say complete, it's not the responsibility of a single person or a single party. It's you know, I liked your example there. It's like everybody and nobody and anybody. Yeah, it was a perfect description, because yeah, that's what happens. That's why we end up with poor information or good quality information, is the culture that exists amongst the stakeholders that are participating on a project. And obviously that is completely the responsibility of project managers to engage people and get them to work and function together and participate together in a way that's going to produce more complete information. Maybe it's not possible to get fully complete information. You know, that's still has to be tested, I suppose. But obviously we want better quality information, not poorer quality information. So, but the main thing I wanted to get across with this slide is you have to understand the relationship of the quality of information and the outcomes on your projects. Because if you want your outcomes to be better, you've got to seek better quality information from the beginning of a project. You can't just leave it to chance. If you just take 5-6 companies, put them together and hope that good quality information is going to come out of that without being deliberate about it, it's probably not going to happen.
Okay, awesome.
So, yeah. So maybe before we get on to talking about BIM, if people want to
I've got
have any questions on at that stage.
Yeah, we've got a few questions which I really want to take those. So just give me one sec. It's been great. We've got so let me just go back to if you can just stop sharing there, Ralph. At least then we can have a bit of a close connection with the participant as well. We've got a question from Mr. Devan Dalia, who is the chairperson of the Council of Registered Professional Engineer, the chairman here. And I think he's put down a very, very important question. Why is there still some hesitation or reluctance to shift to BIM? Why is that? What's happening?
There's a couple of reasons. One is because of the nature of construction projects and the fragmentation, that nobody is responsible for everything. Going back to your little quote in the beginning, people don't see how their small contribution to the project is going to affect the whole. They don't think about that. They're just thinking about their silo, their amount of work, and so they're just trying to do their amount of work in the quickest, easiest way possible without really thinking about the overall picture. And so that's where good clients and good project managers are important to be able to see the whole and to engage people so that they make their little contributions in a way that's going to contribute to the whole.
So eventually,
so that's one of the reasons. I suppose there is another. The other reason would be just a general fear of technology amongst particularly the senior people in companies. There's just an uneasiness about embracing technology. People have been used to writing things on notepads and marking up drawings with red pens, and so it's just that they've been working in a paper-based way for so long that they're just scared of engaging with the technology. That's one of the reasons.
And I'm afraid to say we're still working paper-based. There's so many amount of, and I think I'll probably raise the discussion here. The contract, the way the contract is set up as well, Rob. I mean, I'm sure many will agree here. We work on FIDIC, and depending on how the tenders go down, that we need to submit 3 hard copies on site as well as an email. So we send by email, by Dropbox, plus we have hard copies. If you don't send the hard copies, the contractor will not do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look, the hard copy doesn't stop you using technology. The hard copy is useful as a record. If you end up in court one day and you need a record, but like it's not useful for people to walk around site with a hard copy of a drawing that's 6 months old or out of date, or those are the kinds of things that cause problems. So you want to deliver the most up-to-date and most accurate information to people, and and if there's any change, that change has to get to people as quickly as possible, and that's where technology really helps. So there's a lot of benefits in technology. Of course, we've seen it in everything, like the way we watch television, the way we do our shopping. Digitization has improved the productivity of every other sector. So
all right,
it can
thank
do
you.
the same. Yeah.
There's a good question coming up from Punai. Punai says, so BIM is all about communication then?
It's all about information and communication. Exactly.
Right, I think so. I think because I think the perception, Ralph, was BIM, Revit, software, CAD. I know you do a lot of Revit as well, but could you just explain why do we attach ourselves with BIM and software when we know BIM is not technically software? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, BIM it uses technology because you can't have a digital process without technology. So you can't say we're gonna be digital, but we can take away the technology. So no. It does involve technology, but it's not just about software. It's about the process and how people leverage the technology. So communication is between people ultimately. An architect has to communicate to a contractor on what to do. A contractor has to communicate to a subcontractor on what to do, and using technology to do that is just more efficient. And we'll probably cover that in the next section on
absolutely. There's a good question coming from Stefan, and Stefan says, generally, I mean, you're in Europe and obviously based in Ireland and your international exposure. In terms of law, what does it say in terms of, do we really have to have paper contractually, or can we now, are we moving to contract-based digital information?
Yeah, well, a lot of the contracts are older, so and those contracts would refer to the paper record documents. Okay, so until those contracts get updated, you will still have to provide the record document in paper format. But all the governments are trying to look at digitizing that. So the EU, the European Commission, have a massive drive through their digital deal to digitize the market, if you like, and in general, not only construction. And so the move is to move away from paper, but at the moment, it depends what contracts you use. They're still very paper-based.
Absolutely, and I'm sure a lot of us use FIDIC, and really FIDIC need to really engage and really go for digital. We do have a lot of problem with paper-based, So
well, you can use existing contracts like FIDIC or NEC or any contracts through a BIM protocol. So you can append a BIM protocol to any contract to allow for the digital exchange of information under traditional contracts. So the contract is not stopping you from doing it.
Yeah. Another great question from Christopher. We'll take 5 more minutes before we move on, but we've got lots of questions, which is fantastic. We'll reply to all of them because that's the part of sharing knowledge. Christopher says, do all the different contractors, consultants, have to work with a BIM system to be able to achieve the best result? So do we, like the supply chain, the subcontractors, it could be the valuers, it could be the everybody else around the stakeholders. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you want to work with the data, so the information. I don't know if it's a system, because what you're really interested in is in the information. And if the information can be exchanged in a format that can be used in multiple systems or any system, that's the best scenario, that you're not locking people into a particular format or proprietary system. Okay, and that really depends on how you structure your appointments and contracts, that you ask people to deliver information in an open format that can be used by any system. Okay. So but you've got to do that deliberately. It's like it doesn't happen by accident. Otherwise, people will try and lock you into a proprietary system.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. We've got another question here, which I'm picking up from Mr. Devan. Who should bear the cost for implementing BIM? if the PM is benefiting the most, should he not bear the cost, or should he at least share between all consultant, client, and contractors? Based on your experience and advice to everybody internationally, what's your report on that? How do we get the cost? I know client is not really interested, but how do we get the cost shared?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because like there's a debate as to whether BIM costs more. Like I remember I had that study at the beginning. It said that if you use digital processes, it actually reduces the cost overall. Okay, but of course, everybody's playing a small part. And if you're let's say you're an architect participating on a project and you haven't invested in technology, or you've got outdated technology, well, then you have to be able to participate, you have to invest in some technology and some learning, and so the question is, I suppose the question is, who should pay for that? Well,
absolutely.
I would say in that case, it's the cost of doing business. Like as an architect operating in this business, you should make sure you have the skills and the tools to do your job. Like let's say, I'm going to use a funny example, but let's say if you're a plumber and you need a wrench to do your job, and they discovered a new way of joining pipes together. Does who should pay for that new way? Well, if you're a good plumber, you say, well, it's the cost of our doing business, and we're going to have the best systems in place to deliver the most competitive service. So the cost really should be spread amongst the participants.
All right.
And if a client asks for BIM at the beginning, well, then everybody who's tendering on the project can take that into account. So if they have to make some investment, they can include that in their price. So if you ask for it at the beginning, the problem happens when you start asking for BIM halfway through a project. You start off drawing traditional drawings and things, and then halfway through a client says, by the way, don't you think we should be using BIM? Well, now people have agreed a fee or a price without that in mind, and that's where the arguments begin to happen. So specify it early, and you won't have those problems.
There's a question. We'll take the last question before we move on to the next session, and then we'll pick up the other question afterwards. But I will take two actually. There's a question from Pseudobim from Nigeria, and I think he raises a good point. The issue of fluctuation in cost material, can this be controlled using BIM?
You just broke up there a bit.
In terms of fluctuation, so in terms of fluctuation in costs, so there might be things fluctuate from time to time in the cost of materials. Can that be controlled using BIM?
Yes, is the short. I'll show that in a minute. But basically, and you can do it quicker through BIM because it's digital data that you can analyze. Like going back to my earlier example of the bank statement. If you're looking at a piece of paper, it's hard to pick out the changes. But if you're looking at digital data, it's easy to go and filter out the changes. So process that.
Right, and we'll take a last question before we move on to part two. Does BIM require special software in handling information in the built environment? That's an anonymous attendee. Does BIM require special software in handling information?
Yes, BIM is a technical digital process, and therefore it needs software. You can't do BIM without software. And it's not one piece of software. It's different pieces of software for different things. So if you're a quantity surveyor, you need software that works for quantity surveyors. If you're an architect, you need software that works for architects. If you're an engineer, you need software that does analysis in engineering terms. So it's all software related because you're working with digital data. You can't remove technology from a digital process. Okay,
and finally, before we move to part two, that's a statement from Rahim. Rahim, who's a senior QS, he says, poor information costs a lot of in project. I think with the right person at the right place, we can get a better project.
Absolutely. Well, that was my first point here, is project outcomes are highly dependent on the quality of information. So if you want a good project outcome, you've got to strive for better quality information. If you leave it to chance, it's just going to
Yeah.
fail.
Ralph, let me take one more question because this is really,
Yeah.
really good. And then we definitely move to part two. This is a young engineer. I mean, I'm working with a team where I'm the youngest with 5 years of experience in the infrastructure industry. I understand that the young blood are the hope in the BIM information communication. We are using BIM for documentation. I've also have a manager, 40 years of experience, who is willing to be trained in this data technology. What is your advice to engineer who is struggling in going digital? What's your advice to them?
You have to, people have to, first thing is you have to get a good understanding of them. Not, you know, like a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what it is. And that puts them off pursuing it any further. You know, they've made up their minds that it's something that either is not for them, or it's not good, or it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And that all comes out of a lack of understanding. So the first thing I would say is spend a little bit of time getting a better understanding of what it is and what it means to you personally in your career, and also what it means to you in your business. You know, how is it going to make your career better? Is it going to make your business better? Because once you understand that incentive, then you will be willing to put in the effort to discover more. Okay, so
Right.
that would be my advice. First, get a good understanding. And when I say get a good understanding, I mean listen to people who know what they're talking about. Don't go and talk to your friend in the bar, in the pub, you know, who tried something 20 years ago and, you know, just likes to put everything down. He says, "Oh, that Bim stuff is a waste of time." And yeah, because that's not good advice. That's
and at the back of that, Ralph, you've got a training session for 10 hours, I believe, that you'll show us later. For this anonymous attendee, stay with us at the end, because Ralph's got some nice session, free session for all of us, which we can follow to really get into that digitalization. Ralph, take it away. There's plenty of questions coming in. I really want to ask them, but we'll catch up in part two. Take it away for part two. Everyone, can you have a big round of applause for Ralph for now? If you can put your little emoji for thanking him for all his wisdom and knowledge through BIM, which is super fantastically captivating. Thank you very much indeed. Take it away, Ralph. Thank you.
Okay, so you can see the slides again?
Yeah, perfect. We are back on.
Okay. So the next section, when I get into the detail of BIM, I want to talk about this idea of productivity and efficiency, because it's probably the most important problem that we have in construction, that we haven't been able to change the productivity in construction for the last 40 years. You know, the cost of construction, the time it takes to construct things, the quality is all pretty much stayed the same. Whereas if you look at manufacturing, you know, manufacturing has almost doubled in productivity. That means we produce twice as many computers, twice as many cars, twice as many airplanes, and therefore, you know, the cost of those are coming down, the quality of those is going up. And so that's what I want to talk about next, is productivity. And I'm going to use manufacturing as an example. I know construction is not manufacturing, but I think we can learn something from manufacturing. So when you are going to make a product, like let's say a car, what they do in manufacturing is they construct that car in software completely. They work out how all the parts are going to fit together, and, you know, so they build a car in software. Okay, and because they've got all the parts, they can then procure all the parts from anywhere around the world. They don't have to make all the pieces in the same factory, because everything just arrive at a factory and they can be assembled together because they know it's going to work. So when it gets to the assembly line, they construct that car 100% according to the digital model. You know, and they don't change things. I think this is an important thing to learn for us in construction. They don't change things as it's moving down the assembly line, because, you know, you don't know what the effect of that change will be on something else later on the assembly line. And because they work that way, when it gets to the physical product or the car, that you have a digital version of that car, you know, 100% version, if you like, or digital twin is a word that's being used. of that product. Okay, and that's why you can go into any spare shop and somebody can type in a computer the model number of your car, and instantly you can get information about the spare parts, where they're available, etc. Okay. In construction, we do things slightly differently. So we don't fully construct the building in software. We don't work it all out. We produce what's called design intent information. It's uncoordinated, it's unresolved, but we feel there's enough there for somebody to put a price to it. We go out to the market for procurement, and effectively what contractors are doing is purchasing packages of work at risk. So they're looking at information that's unresolved, uncoordinated, but they're just making an estimate of what it would cost to actually build that. And the first time we begin to resolve and coordinate things is on site. So there's a lot of changes happening on site. Now everybody knows that the most expensive, most disruptive, and most dangerous place to make changes is on site. And yet we continue to do that. And of course, because we're making a lot of changes on site and those aren't being captured in the information, well, the information that you end up with at the end is that room full of boxes, which is of little use to anybody. Okay, so when you look at these two models, you'd say, well, how are these different? Well, the big difference, as I can see, is in manufacturing, they build things twice. They build it first in software, and then they build it a second time in reality on the assembly line. Whereas in construction, we build it once. We progressively develop up the information and in fact make a lot of changes on site, which is what's adding to the cost and the disruption and the delay. Okay, so you might think that building something once is more efficient than building it twice, but when you look at these two models together, clearly manufacturing have come up with a way to be more productive and more efficient by building things twice. So that's the first thing I think we can learn about efficiency and productivity from the manufacturing industry. When it comes to producing information, if we look at the way things are normally done at the moment, let's just call this no BIM, the way we produce information is we describe the building or infrastructure in several ways. So we produce plans, elevations, sections, details, schedules, specifications. So all these different documents are trying to describe one thing. And the problem is there's inconsistencies and errors and omissions within that set of information, which turns into RFIs and delays and disputes and rework and all the usual problems of construction. So you could say it's an incomplete and inaccurate set of information that's causing a lot of the problems. With BIM, it's more like the manufacturing approach. So you're not investing your time and effort in drawing all these documents. You're describing the building or infrastructure through intelligent 3D objects that are assembled in a model. So at the very core of BIM is this idea of an object that represents a component or a material of a building. So let's say a door, okay? So there's an object that represents that component. That object contains information about that component in a digital format. So who the manufacturer is, what the fire rating is, what the acoustic rating is, etc. So information that describes the physical and functional properties of that component. Then you assemble these components into a virtual building, a digital model of the building or infrastructure. So you're effectively building the building in software. And because you're doing that, you can make sure that all the pieces are going to fit together and can be located in space together. You can look at the sequence of construction. You can look at the cost, because every object knows what it is. You can extract the quantities very quickly. You can carry out analysis that could be structural analysis, energy analysis, etc. So you can do a lot of stuff that you never could do before with 2D drawings and documents. And then the model generates the output document. So nobody's drawing drawings anymore. The objects in the model can represent themselves in drawings or schedules, etc. Okay, And when you look at these two side by side, you know, some people might say, well, what's the difference? At the end of the day, you're going to have the same output documents, okay? But there's a massive difference. The first is the amount of effort and time you're putting in is greatly reduced because you're only describing the building once. You're not describing it several times. And also, you don't have all these inconsistencies because the documentation is coming from the same source of data. Okay, so you're greatly improving the quality of information by doing things this way.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want to tell you about a third way of working, because unfortunately a lot of this is happening in the market, is what I call Pseudobim. And that's where maybe a client says, you know, I'd like you to use Bim on my project, and the team go and they do exactly what they did before. They go and produce drawings and details and schedules as separate documents. So they describe the building in several ways. And then in addition to that, they go have one person in the corner of the office who's trying to convert that into a model. Okay, so because the client asked for BIM. And you know, you look at that, so there's no increase in efficiency or productivity there. You've actually made things worse. You've added another procedure, you've added another output. But what's worse is the output documents weren't generated from the model. So all the inconsistencies, errors, and omissions, all the problems you had before still exist within that original document set. And now you have a model which is completely disconnected and separate from that output. So, you know, that's important to understand, because for some reason a lot of people are practicing this Pseudobim, just which isn't helping. And what I wanted to say is, everybody who produces information has available to them three options. So they can use no BIM or Pseudobim. And when we talk about productivity and efficiency, and we consider the amount of original effort that has to go in, and also rework and changes, because often things have to change. You know, in BIM, you go and make the change once and everything's updated, where is in no BIM, you've got to go make that change in all the individual drawings and documents, etc. Okay, and if you had to rank these three in terms of efficiency and productivity, well, obviously BIM is the most efficient, most productive, and has the best outcome in quality of information.
And Ralph, just a quick one then. Is this where you add value as a consultant coming in here and you say, okay, guys, this is how we should be doing things as a consultant leading and help out the team?
Yeah, well, as a consultant, we help the team. Firstly, we help the clients to ask for BIM correctly, because you know, that's important, that what the client's brief and the client's instructions to the design team and the construction team are like setting the rules of the game. And if the client asks incorrectly, the game is going to go bad. So that's one area where we help the clients ask the right questions. And then we help the design teams and the construction teams to deliver to them correctly by showing them that this is the best way to do this. Don't use
but you know where you've got the cross on the slide there, where you've got the red cross on the inconsistencies and the red cross on the no connection. Is that where you come in and start ticking them in green?
Well, ticking in green is actually automatic if they use the process properly. So because they're creating this digital model, and the model is generating the output documents, and they're consistent because they're coming from the same model, and they, you can still have errors, but you'll see the error everywhere. You'll see it in the 3D model, you'll see it in all the documents, because everything is coming from the same database. So people would see errors far earlier and far quicker, because it'll be visible everywhere, rather than buried in a particular document or particular drawing, or etc. And in terms of completeness, because you have this massive efficiency in the way you produce information, you have some time to produce more information than you would have before. Like, a lot of people are just trying to produce as little information as possible, because with decreased fees, etc., and pressure on time, etc. So people are trying to produce less information rather than more information, which is also a problem.
Absolutely,
So,
thank you.
yeah. So no BIM is probably the next one in terms of efficiency, but Pseudobim is the least efficient. And I just wanted to make that point because unfortunately a lot of people are practicing Pseudobim, pretending to be doing BIM when in fact they're just working as they always did. Plus they have a junior guy in the office producing BIM. So, I mean, you might ask, well, why should we build the building twice? And I think I illustrated that point with the manufacturers. You want to build the digital model of the building, and you want that digital model to inform the physical construction. Now, it doesn't mean the digital model has to be fully complete before you even begin the physical construction, but at least the element of the building you're building on site should be complete in the digital model, so it can, so you're feeding the right information at the time. A couple of points here is, one, you have to do the work anyway, so you have to produce the information anyway, so you might as well produce it in the digital model straight away. So that means there's no additional cost, there's no additional time involved. And but back to your earlier question, like who should pay for this additional cost? Well, it's not an additional cost if this is the way you work. These are the tools you use as a business. And you have to produce the information anyway. You can resolve things in the digital model, which is quicker and cheaper and safer than doing it on site, because doing it on site is the most expensive, most disruptive and unsafe way. You can reduce the amount of rework that's occurring through value engineering, technical submittals, construction approvals, etc. And you can capture, as you're moving along, the information for a phased handover. You get this really interesting opportunity at the end of construction where the digital model is fully complete long before the project is complete, and the facilities management team and the owner can engage with that digital model to plan for the commissioning, handover, and mobilization of facilities management. So there's lots of reasons why you should do things this way. As to working together and collaboration, so you had a collaboration.
Ralph, sorry, Ralph, just a quick one. Ralph, sorry about that. I was on mute. Can you go back to that slide quickly? I really love this, and I think a lot of people. Can you put your hands up, everyone, for this? Because I think this is really, really. I think it just shows you exactly how things can be done quickly, and so much time being saved there for the opportunity for virtual commissioning and handover, Ralph.
Yeah, and the point I wanted to make with this slide is that the digital model should be driving the physical construction, not the other way around. Because what we're seeing on a lot of projects is people are building stuff on site, and the digital model is catching up, and that's doing it the wrong way around, obviously, because the digital model is not helping at all. Then,
and I think that's a really good one. It's a very good pictorial view for all of us to really take a snapshot of that. And maybe really put that with us, with our colleagues, and share it. I think that's a really, really powerful. Thank you for this one, Ralph. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, no problem. So collaboration was one of your big words there earlier, and obviously we have to collaborate and work together. But at the moment, the way this works is every discipline, every supplier to a project is producing a digital model of their work only. So the architect is producing an architectural model, the structural engineer is producing a structural model, etc. And you're bringing these models together in what's called the federated model. So the federated model looks like a complete building. It's got everything in it, but it's, when you peel it back, it's actually a collection of different models from different participants on the project. Okay. But you can do, in this federated model, clash detection. So the software can find where things are not fitting together, and the coordination. So you can begin to coordinate this building before you get to site. You can resolve issues in this digital environment using the software. So that's one of the first things that people get out of this process, is that you can do coordination in the virtual environment. The next thing is you can connect all the objects. Remember I said everything was an object.
Yeah.
you can connect all those objects to a construction program and look at the sequence of construction, how those objects arrive logistically, in time. So the fourth dimension is time. So people are calling that 4D Bim. That's where you connect time to the construction, and you look at the physical construction in the digital model. There's a story that Lang O'Rourke, who built the Leadenhall office building in London,
Yeah.
financial district. Yeah, they built that building over 30 times in software before they even got to site. They knew exactly how each thing was going to come together logistically. They could look at health and safety issues in that digital environment, risk assessments, etc. So that's really useful to do, and something it's very difficult to do without BIM. You can also, because every object understands what it is, you can extract quantities from those objects. So you can count the things, you can get the quantities of concrete, steel, whatever. So you can extract the quantities from the model, and so what people are calling 5D BIM. Now, of course, the model will only tell you what you've put in the model. So you still need a quantity surveyor who's able to look at that data and see what's not in the model, and because otherwise you might miss something. So that doesn't get rid of quantity surveyors. So don't worry, quantity surveyors. You still need it, desperately needed. In fact, there's a desperate need for quantity surveyors who can work in this way. You can carry out analysis, so you can connect that model to real life, weather information, exposure to sun, exposure to wind, etc. You can test the model in terms of its energy performance, its structural performance. You can look at life cycle cost analysis. So, all this analysis is trying to improve the quality, performance, and sustainability of a project. So people are calling that 6D BIM. It's not really a dimension, but anyway, that's what people are calling it. And then lastly, instead of giving the client owners a room full of boxes of paper at the end, you can capture all the information they need to use to maintain and operate this building in facilities management in a digital way. So that could be maintenance information, warranty information, etc. So people are calling that 7D BIM. So what's really exciting about BIM is the effort to create the information is only done once, but you can use that information for multiple things. All these things we discussed.
And Ralph, just a quick one. When I was studying at university, we were at 3D BIM, but now you're talking at 7D BIM.
Well, these are names that people have come up with in the industry, but they're uses of BIM, how you use BIM once you have it. So once you've created this digital model, you can do all these things with it, such as planning, sequencing, logistics, health and safety, cost control, analysis, etc. So these are just uses of BIM. So don't let the terminology get you too confused. I'm just telling you what the terminology is, because you might be in a meeting and somebody says, we're going to do 7D BIM. Then you need to know what they're talking about. Okay, but what they're really talking about is capturing asset information for facilities management. Okay, so those are different uses of BIM. So I want to introduce this idea of a digital twin. So we talked about this digital model or digital representation of a building, and we talked about the physical building or piece of infrastructure. And if you think about it, every piece of building, every piece of infrastructure is a collection of components. It's a collection of components and materials. So you could say that for every physical component, I've just taken one component there, an air handling unit, that there will be a digital representation of that. And that digital representation will look like this. The first thing is there will be an object in a three-dimensional model. And the object's important because it describes the size and the shape and the location of the component in space. It also describes the connections that component has to other components. So those could be physical fixings, or it could be connections to mechanical and electrical services, etc. So that's one. Let's just call that graphical data. So that's when people think of Revit and those kinds of things. That's what they're talking about. It's a 3D model of a building. Of course, you also need to know something about that component, so that the physical and functional aspects or characteristics of that component. Let's call them attributes, such as who the manufacturer is, what the model is, what the airflow rate is, etc., etc. So you want that information in a digital format so that you can analyze it in different processes. Let's call that non-graphical data. Okay.
Yeah.
And the third representation of this component is documentation. So we can't get away from documentation completely. So I don't know about Mauritius, but in Europe, you can't sell a product on the market unless it has a CE mark. So under the construction product regulations, it has to have a technical performance certificate. It has to have gone through testing and all sorts of things. So there's probably an instruction manual on how to install and operate it, etc. So these are documents that you need to keep and have associated with this component. Okay, so these three.
And also, Rad, the CE mark. What is it? Does it stand for, please? The CE mark.
It's a mark for construction, and we have regulations in Europe called the construction product regulations. So it's a European product mark. You know, it's like a stamp. If you look at look at your phone or anything, there's usually like a little stamp at the back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our problem is that we get a lot of things from China. So because it's cheap, there's no CE mark.
There won't be, but you still, if you're going to install a product on site, you want to know that it's been tested and it's suitable for use, etc. So you need to collect evidence, like call it record evidence that this product is suitable. Because if, let's say, something happens to the project. I mean, I don't know if any of you have been following the Grenfell disaster in the UK, you know, the big fire. But yeah, that's the problem, is people installing products that are not suitable for use, and that's putting people's lives in danger. And the evidence from the designers or whoever made that choice of product has to be available to demonstrate compliance with regulations. So the documentation is important. You can't get rid of that. So you could say that the digital representation of every physical component will be three types of data, and this data will be held in a system called a common data environment, because we're not going to print it out and put it in a BArch file and put it in a box and put it in a storeroom in the building. So that we're getting away from that paper process and we're getting into a data process. So that data is held in a common data environment. Okay, and also classification becomes important when you start talking about data. You have to start talking the same language. You can't, in the days of paper, as long as the paper was white and the ink was black, it didn't really matter what you did in the background to make that piece of paper. Okay, so you could have used whatever layers and any pen styles and whatever you like. But now that we're sharing data, we can't create a mess. We have to have a common classification of things. And in the UK and Ireland, we use a classification system called Uniclass. In the US, they use Omniclass, and there's a few classification systems around the world. I don't know what you guys use in Mauritius, but the idea is that everything, the object in the model would have that classification, the non-graphical data would have that classification, and ideally all the relevant documents to this component would also have that classification. So it's you tying it together with something that's machine readable. Now that code is not meant to be understood by a person. It's the classification code is meant to be understood by a machine to make it machine readable. Okay. Now the object, as I said earlier, has enough geometry to create a drawing. So nobody has to draw drawings anymore. The object can represent itself in a drawing if you want a drawing. Even the notes on the drawing, nobody has to type notes on a drawing anymore, because the non-graphical data can be displayed on a drawing as a tag. Nobody has to type out schedules anymore, because the non-graphical data can be presented on a schedule as well. Okay, so those traditional outputs that your contracts require, like you said, your FIDIC contract still requires 3 copies of the drawings. you can still have that because the object can create the drawing, or the non-graphical data can create the schedules, and we can do all these interesting things that we spoke about.
Absolutely.
With BIM, okay? And eventually, under the true definition of a digital twin, at some time in the future, there's even going to be a connection between the physical component and the digital component through sensors and IoT devices. So that's where things are going, okay? And now that's if you use BIM, but of course, if you don't use BIM, well, there's no objects anymore. There's no graphical data. There's no non-graphical data to work with. You have drawings, but those are all manually produced. You have schedules of information, but those are all manually typed out. And you can still have all the documentation that you collect as you go through, but you've just limited what you can do. You can't do any 4D sequencing. You can't do any 5D cost extraction. You can't do any analysis, anything like that. Okay, so with BIM, without BIM. Okay, last slide, and then we can have some questions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Just want to say, like, what do your clients want? Because that's important to understand. And I can tell you, clients don't want BIM. I'm just going to say that again. Clients don't want BIM. What they want is to understand what they're going to get. So that, what's the scope of the building.
Just quick, Ralph, sorry to interrupt. Let's just take a quick question for the Zoom, and also you can have a bit of a breather as well. So let me just ask what client wants to everyone watching us right now. I've got few polls. So let me just share that with everyone. And everyone, if you can see that on the screen, what does client want? Better building, quicker building, cheaper building, or all of the above? I think that will probably get Ralph a bit of a appreciation of what's going on with all the participants today. What does client want? Better building, quicker building, cheaper building. I mean, we all want cheap. All of the above. So already 65% of you have already voted. Please put your question in. Your vote in as we give you 20 seconds more. What does client want? Better building, quicker building, cheaper building, and all of the above. All of the above was introduced by Ralph. Ralph said to me, why don't you put all of the above there? Because I think everybody's probably going to click on that as well. So I'm just going to end polling. Most of you have voted, and I'm going to just end polling. Ralph, what do you think before I share the result?
I'd say all of the above. I really believe that's what clients want.
Wow, this is what I call a man of experience from Ireland. I'm going to share the experience now, and it's a whopping 76%, right? Says that all of the above. What's your thought on that? Some said 10% better building, quicker 9%, 16 cheaper. What's your views on the poll today by our participant?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Most clients feel that the cost of construction is too high, that the time for construction is too long, and the quality of construction is poor. They want improvements in all three areas. That's mine.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. And let me share one more poll before. I've got two more polls, maybe just before again. This one is, how many of you are using BIM right now? I think it'd be good to know how many of you are using BIM, just to really give Ralph a bit of an insight of what's going on. So how many of you are using BIM? You've got about 30 seconds again to conclude your poll. I think that's important because I think we've got a bit of appreciation. Some of you may have been using BIM, but only realized when Ralph was doing the presentation. So I'm just gonna give you 5 more seconds before we conclude the poll. The poll is totally honest. It's not biased at all. There's no political interference on the poll here. So I'm just gonna end polling now and share the result with you. So Ralph, 77% says no, they're not using. And obviously minor 23% says yes, they are using BIM. So I'm just going to stop with that and take one more before you take on your, this is a good one actually. And I'm going to share that with everyone now. As developing countries start entering the digital built environment space, should these developing countries be following the earlier adopting countries BIM international standard? And if so, who should be we following in terms of guidance? So I've got United Kingdom, China, probably cheaper stuff. There's no CE mark. Australia, United States, European Union, where obviously RAF is within, Singapore, Canada, and South Africa as well. Just to let you know as well, RAF is a South African, but based in Ireland. So he's South Africa and Africa is in his heart. So, so quickly, we've only got obviously 15 seconds left. As developing countries, who are we looking to follow in terms of the built environment space? Be great to have your views on that one. United Kingdom, China, Australia, United States, European Union, Singapore, Canada, or South Africa. I'd love to see South Africa leading the way here as well. So I'm just going to end polling. Most of you have voted. Thank you very much, and we're going to stop now. What's your thought on that, based on your experience, before I share the polling, Ralph?
I would say we now have international, because in the next section I'm going to talk about international standards. So
yeah,
you know, no, it's fair to say that those international standards have emerged from a lot of the work that the UK did.
okay.
But there are international standards now, and my take is people should, if you haven't adopted a standard, then you should follow the international standards. If you have a national standard and you're outside of the European Union, then obviously you as a country you need to decide whether you want to fit into what's happening internationally. But
yeah. So the results are here, Ralph.
Yeah.
46% says UK, 6% says China, 3% Australia, 6% United States, 18% European Union, 10% Singapore, 3% Canada, South Africa 7%. But why is the UK 46%? Why is that?
Well, I think it's because, as I just said, the international standards, the UK have spent a lot of time since 2010, so, developing these standards and bringing them forward to UK standards, to international standards, and those standards have now been adopted by the European Union. So they're both international standards and European standards.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, why the UK is fairly large.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Ralph. Let's move on to the next one before we take some Q&A. Thank you very much indeed for all your participants. Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so clients want to understand what it is they're going to get. So the scope, they want to understand when it's going to be delivered. They want to understand how much it's going to cost. They want to understand the quality. By quality, I mean is how well is it going to be constructed? How durable will it be? How much will it cost me to maintain and operate this building or piece or infrastructure asset? They obviously want to understand that they're getting good value for money, that they're not being ripped off. Okay, and they also want to understand that their risks are being managed by the professional teams that they employ. I think that's probably the most important thing for clients. Is most clients are not involved in the construction industry. So if you're a banker, for instance, your business is finance. You need a building to do some banking, but you're not involved in the construction industry, and that's why you hire professional people to build your bank for you. And but of course, you want to make sure that you get what you want at the end of the day. So certainty is a big issue for clients. And when you look at this, you'd say, well, what's this got to do with BIM? And well, the first thing I would say is the 3D aspect of BIM. The fact that you've built this building or piece of infrastructure digitally, and you can take your client and look around it and walk through it and let them fully understand the scope before you execute the work is really important, because as any project manager will know, like most of the changes occur really late in a project because the clients only begin to understand what they're getting, but when they see it going up, and that's obviously the wrong time to be making changes. So you want to take them through the virtual building before you go and get a price for it. Like you want them to fully understand what it is they're getting. And so the 3D aspect is really important. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but many people don't know how to read drawings, so 2D drawings. Architects, engineers have gone to college to learn to read drawings, but for most people, just ordinary people, looking at a drawing is like looking at a white piece of paper with black lines. It doesn't mean anything. But everybody understands the three-dimensional world because you live in the three-dimensional world. That's You don't have to train anybody to look at a three-dimensional model. The 4D aspects of BIM, connecting it to the program, obviously helps everybody understand the time. The 5D aspects of BIM, and just gets better cost control, more accurate cost control. The analysis, the 6D aspects of BIM, is all about quality, designing and constructing buildings that will perform as they intended to perform, but also understand the life cycle costs of those assets. And then the 7D aspects of BIM, capturing all the asset information in a digital format, in my opinion, is also a quality issue, that you're not giving your client that room full of boxes at the end, but you're giving them useful, accurate digital data that they can work with going forward. So you can see that BIM touches everything that's important to clients, but of course, clients are not going to the market saying we want to buy BIM. What they're saying is we want to buy a building. And as professionals in this industry, we've got to give our clients the best advice and say, if you want the best outcome on your projects, then this is the way to go. Okay, it's like when I go to a doctor, I mean, it's a funny conversation. A lot of people say to me, well, we're not doing BIM because our clients are not asking for BIM. And my answer to that is, well, if you went to the doctor and you were sick, and you didn't ask for the right treatment, and is your doctor off the hook then to give you the best medical advice? It's the other way around. The doctor is the professional, and the doctor should be giving you the best diagnosis and the best treatment for your illness so that you can get better. And that's, it really makes me mad when professional people in this industry use the excuse that their clients are not asking for BIM as a way not to be professional and not to give the best advice to their clients. But that's the reality. Clients are not asking for BIM because that's not their business. But we've concluded that people want better buildings, quicker buildings. This is interesting. So if you look at these targets for the construction strategy in the UK, the UK want to build buildings 50% quicker, 50% better. And by better, they're going to measure it through carbon, and 33% cheaper. Okay, so just think about that for a minute. Like those are really ambitious targets if you think about our industry. But the UK industry have determined that there's so much inefficiency and waste in the system of construction that those targets are realistic. They can achieve that. So that's interesting to think about. Okay, so will we take another break?
Yeah, but before that, if you can stop sharing, Ralph.
Okay.
I've got a small surprise for you as well. Ralph talked about lead and whole building, and I did a small. I watched the whole documentary on how they build it, and I managed to put something together. Not now, but I did it a long time ago. So I wanted to share that with you, Ralph, because that's kind of resonated. They built it 37 times on digital before they get to that. Let me just show you that quickly before we take some questions. So I'm just gonna try to see if it works. And I'm gonna share that with you now. So let's see if that's worked. And if you can hear the sound and the images, just put your hands up. Off we go. Okay, so that's the one. And where's play here? Here we go.
Massive change. They know that their floor is already made. We've manufactured it. It's to the correct quality. And they know that it will come and arrive on time and allow them to install it in their slot on site.
The system only works with total precision, the right mix into the right mold, with gaps for all the utilities that will come later. By 10 a.m., Christian has laid 18 30-foot square floor slabs, weighing 2.5 tons each. To stay on target, he must lay a further 34 by the end of his shift. That's one every 10 minutes. Overseeing the work is 28-year-old project engineer Carl Wilkinson. It's his responsibility to ensure work doesn't fall behind schedule. Just in time means nearly too late. It would be impossible to coordinate the delivery and installation of hundreds of thousands of components using conventional 2D plans. So, instead, they've created a 3D model of the entire structure, accurate down to the last bolt.
We've spent a lot of time in the 3D environment making sure that when things come to site, we've got that assurity that it all fits together and that it all works, and make the actual process on site as efficient as possible. We refer to it as digital engineering. Digital engineering for me really is a future for construction.
Every delivery, every crane lift, every beam, bolt, and cable fix has already been given a time slot. They've run the complete simulation and built the Leadenhall building in a virtual world 37 times. But they only get one chance to build it for real. With all of the main systems installed, they're ready to plug into the power grid, flick the switch, and bring the Leadenhall building to life. Almost 40,000 components have been assembled in under 2 years, a European construction record for a building of this size. The architects, engineers, and construction workers at the Leadenhall building have pushed the limits of what can be achieved in the smallest of spaces and tightest of schedules.
When we've been engrossed in it as much as we have, it's very hard to stand back and see just what we've actually achieved over the last 2 years, and we really have achieved something very, very special in a very short period of time. It's an absolute celebration of engineering.
In the heart of an ancient city, the building of the future has arrived. Right on schedule.
Okay, so as you've seen this, and I already get goosebumps anytime I watch that. What's your thought on, really, I mean, you probably studied that. Quickly, before we take some questions, Rob, what's your thought on that? So, you said 30 times, but it's 37 times, you just there. What's your thought on that by really working at it on digital and get it right first time on site?
Well, the most important thing I would say is it's so cheap and quick and easy to do that in the digital model in comparison to working it out on site. You know, like, you've got to make that comparison. 70% of projects over time, over budget. You know, like, we're talking about huge infrastructure waste, and particularly for countries, you know, like I'm sure Mauritius, South Africa, other countries where you have limited resources. You know, like, we can't afford to waste financial resources and even the time by messing it up in the physical environment. And that's one of the problems, and this is something I'm quite passionate about, is the construction industry is such an amazing industry, and what we do, but we are struggling to meet the demands of the world. Like, we're not building enough housing, we're not building enough schools, we're not building enough hospitals, and all because we're doing things in an outdated way that is delivering poor outcomes. And you know, the everything's available to us right now. The technology's advanced. It's not, you know, like, Bim's been around for 30, 40 years. It's not new. It's just people's lack of or reluctance to push ahead and use the best technology available. And you wouldn't do that in medicine. Like, you would try and give people the best treatment if they were sick. You know, like, you wouldn't give them the worst treatment.
Absolutely. Just picking up some quick questions before we move on to your final part. Cherry says very often it is the pressure from the client himself to get started early, like as if the client needed the building yesterday, and then coordination obviously suffers. do you think that we should really sit down and have a proper and detailed brief? Few words quickly on that one.
Well, I think project managers, the role of a project manager is to manage the expectations of the client and make sure that the right procedures are put in place that doesn't happen. You know, so if your client has unreasonable expectations, I think a project manager has to sit down with the client and say, look, there's a way to do things that gets results, and there's a way to do things that doesn't get results. And that, in my opinion, would be a definition of a good project manager, is one that is managing the client as well as the project team.
Absolutely.
Because the client is just one part of the team.
Absolutely. Thank you. We've got a question from Kalpana. She's an electrical engineer. Does the client need to employ a BIM manager for a project to succeed on a BIM platform? Will this person be from the professional team?
The client needs to employ professionals that are able to work together in a BIM environment. You know, and like, it's not as if one person is going to manage everybody. You know, like, but the BIM is about everybody coming together and working in a coordinated way. Now, the client needs to have somebody on their side that is able to specify what they want the team to do.
Yeah.
And also to check, you know, what's being delivered. So whether you call that person a BIM manager or, you know, an information manager, yeah, I don't really. Those terms are all in the air, basically. They all mean the same thing. I mean,
okay.
BIM management is not something that one person does. It's something that everybody does.
Okay. There's a question from Amory, and it's a good question. I think it's going to affect slightly some of the colleagues watching. Would reducing the number of consultants not solve the coordination issues? For example, architect used to do project management and quantity surveying, and now it is subcontracted to specialists and give more room for errors. I don't know, what's your views on that one?
I think buildings are getting more complicated. And so I think the natural tendency is to specialize, because like, as a profession, as a person, there's only so much you can know and so much you can do. And as buildings are getting more complicated and the projects are getting more complicated, you know, I think specialization is what's going to happen. What we need to do is try to figure out how to work better. So the collaboration aspect of, you know, bigger parties working together is incredibly important. And BIM is helping the collaboration, because you can see immediately if somebody has done something wrong or is not doing something they're meant to do in the BIM environment. Whereas if someone puts, you know, 500 drawings on your desk, it takes you a long time to figure out if things aren't working. So yeah, the collaboration is massively scaled up, if you like, in the BIM environment, and that's really useful when the parties get bigger and the specializations get bigger.
Fantastic, thank you. We've got Atunike from Nigeria, and there's a lot of colleagues been asking the same question. Are you not worried about being hacked?
Well, data security, well, I presume that's a question about data security. You know, and if it's data sensitive projects, data security obviously is an issue, and it's something you have to deal with. But yeah, I'm probably less worried that room full of boxes of paper. Yeah, I'm probably more worried that that's going to catch on fire and kill people than. But it depends on the project. If it's a data sensitive project, data security is an issue that has to be dealt with, but it can be dealt with.
Okay, and just in terms of COVID-19, I had a statement earlier in terms of the COVID takeaways that through this pandemic, we are really thinking of working remotely and as best as we can through our abilities. And there's a question there from an anonymous attendee. Can you relate us to how BIM will help us during the COVID lockdown? I think it's more than important, right? It's never been important ever.
Yeah, absolutely. We went into lockdown March last year, and we were working on a number of projects where all the participants were already using these tools and collaboration tools. there was hardly any impact. Like people just took their computer home and carried on working, and had Teams meetings and things kept moving on. We worked on other projects where people had been avoiding this digital way of working, and they were really impacted because they relied on being in the same office and working together. And so I think that digitization has really helped, and it's shown, I think what's also exciting, it's shown that people can work from all different locations. One of our staff members is from Italy originally, and she went to Italy on holiday and couldn't come back, but she could carry on working, and which is amazing. And without digitization, that would have been incredibly difficult. And the fact that we're having this webinar across the world.
I was going to say, we are living example and live example of what's happening right now. If it wasn't COVID-19, I know obviously we're suffering in COVID-19, but we would never have that conversation.
Yeah. So look, digitization is making a tremendous impact, a positive impact. And I know people like to meet up and like to be in the same environment, and obviously that's preferable if you can, but at least we can carry on working, we can carry on being productive.
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely. In terms of your experience, there's a lot of young people and senior practitioners watching right now in the live webinar, adopting BIM worldwide. Majid has asked a question. How far are we? How far are we to really get 100%? 10 years, 20 years? Or are we already doing it, but we don't know about it?
Well, I'd say, just to the second part, if you were doing it, you would know about it. So, so if you're not doing it by accident, you'd be deliberately doing it. How far are we? Well, the industry will never be anywhere. It's always going to progress, always carries on. Change is always happening. And I suppose a more important question is, how far behind are you from everyone else? Because if your business and your career depends on being competent in this area, and you're not, then you're in trouble. Like your business is in trouble, your career is in trouble. So I think that's a more important question. But things are moving on all the time, and technology will never stop. Progress will never stop. So people are already looking at robotics and drones and laser scanners and all sorts of interesting technologies to continuously improve the way construction works, and that progress is never going to stop. So
all right,
we're never going to reach a point where progress stops. Well, progress never stops. I mean, change always happens.
Just we'll take 3 more questions. There's a very, I think, normal question. Is AutoCAD BIM?
No. AutoCAD is a drafting tool. Well, it's a drafting tool. Unless you're using AutoCAD in 3D and you're creating objects and you're connecting attributes to those objects, yes, there's elements you can use AutoCAD in BIM, and like there's tools like Civil 3D, which is an AutoCAD based tool, but it works in 3D with attributes. That's BIM. But if you're drawing lines and drawing 2D drawings, that's not BIM.
So another question from me might be stupid, but is Revit BIM?
No. Revit is a tool to produce models, okay? But you could use other tools, Tekla, ArcDox, Bentley, So, and people should use tools that work for them. So some tools are better for architects, some tools are better for engineers, some tools are better for contractors. There's lots of tools. So you can't just say everything is Revit, because it's not.
Perfect.
People creating steel frames in Tekla are, contributing to the process. So
okay, thank you. There's a question coming up. In terms of in developing countries, contractors are far behind in terms of adopting BIM. What's happening in Ireland and Europe? Are contractors leading the way? I know there's like the Langeroog, the Bouygues, the Vinci. They are leading the way. And the Mace, what's your thought on that?
There was a big push from contractors, particularly contractors who hired designers in sort of public-private partnerships, because obviously there's a lot of benefit to contractors in being able to resolve issues before they get to site, because often a contractor is in a sort of guaranteed maximum price contract, and if there's rework or delays or anything, they have to take that on board, and that's obviously reducing their profits and putting a lot of risk. So contractors were a big driver in terms of pushing designers, and but I think now governments, particularly in the UK, the government in the UK were really a key driver for the UK, and that sort of spilled over into Ireland, because the government said, well, we purchase so much construction and we want to reduce the waste and improve the delivery and etc. And so I think clients, in that case the government, are also a key driver. So it's been different in different countries. Some countries have a top-down approach, others had a bottom-up approach, some have a middle-in approach, but
okay, just a quick one. There's a question. We'll take two and then we'll finally finalize your part three. There's a question from Alvin, who's a leading client in Mauritius. For our information, Alvin says, we as client have specified to implement BIM on our own project, and the consultant, being very much aware of same, have included this in their proposal. However, as a client, we took care of the cost of a common data environment. That's a good initiative, right?
Well, there is a cost. I mean, ultimately, all costs come back to the client anyway. I mean, there's an operating cost of these systems, and like you could say, there's a cost of printing as well. So, like in the old days, people used to print thousands and thousands of drawings and documents, and the cost was passed on to the client in their service or their fee. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a new cost. It's just a different cost. You're not spending lots of money on printing paper documents. You're spending money on a digital platform where people can collect it. In fact, and you're saving so much time. I mean, there have been studies where they've measured that it took people about 20% of their time to find information. So imagine that you're working a 5-day week, and one whole day of your week is just spent looking for information. So that's a huge cost to companies and to businesses as well. And by implementing this common data environment and allowing people to quickly find stuff, and it's of benefit to anyone. So I don't see those things as costs. I see them as benefits.
Final question, and this is a good one before we move to part three. Tanvir says, is BIM demanding on computation power? So do we need powerful computers to really run BIM? Because, back in the days we had 8 gigs, 4 gigs memory and whatever we call it. And now we need the 16 gigs and all the powerful that come with it. What's your thought on that in terms of having powerful computers, especially the architects watching and the engineers who does a lot of design, not so much the PM? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, it depends on the size of project you're working on. I mean, computers are powerful nowadays anyway. Like you can't buy a computer with anything less than 16 gigs. I think that's, or 4 gig graphics card. Like it's part of this productivity thing. Computers are becoming cheaper and cheaper every year, and more powerful. And so, no, if you're working on a massive hospital project, yes, it will be taxing on the computers, because it's a complicated project. But of course, on that type of project, you know what you're working with, and you'll have the best hardware and software available to you. If you're working on small housing extensions, you don't need a powerful computer. So it really depends. But I think the key point here, and it's a very important point for people, is technology is the cheapest thing available. If you think about any business, your most expensive aspect is labor. You're paying architects and engineers and contractors, incredible amounts of money on the labor cost, the technology is a fraction of that cost. So technology is always cheap. It's incredibly cheap when you compare it to labor. And that's the problem that we have in productivity. We don't count the cost of labor. You say, well, we'll just put 5 people on that job.
Right.
Because it's not, well, it would be easier to buy some cheap technology and put 4 people on that instead, and have that extra person on another project, because we're not meeting the demand. Everybody's working under pressure and working late and working weekends and trying to keep up by applying labor to the problem. Whereas we could take cheap technology and apply that. So
absolutely. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. We'll take the question at the end. Let's move on to part 3. Can we have a big round of applause for Ralph, please, for part 2? Some fantastic wisdom. Thank you, Ralph. And let's move to part 3, which is the final session before we conclude our amazing webinar. So, Ralph, all yours. Take it away. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thanks. So I want to talk a little bit about standards now, because I think this is important. And we started this conversation today to say that you can't do project management without information management. So information is central to how projects work and the outcomes of projects. And therefore, project management and information management almost work hand in hand. In fact, you could say information management is at the center, because good quality information will lead to good quality project management or asset management. Now, when it comes to best practice and standards, I think standards is one of these words that as soon as you hear the word, you feel like it's going to be a burden. It's going to be extra work for you, and something you probably want to avoid. So my general experience of the construction industry is that people don't like to follow standards. They prefer just to do things their own way. Of course, in doing things your own way, that's what makes things difficult. Like, standards actually make things work really well. And a really good example of this is the internet. So if you think of the HTML standard, it's the reason why the internet works. It's the reason why we're sitting here having this conversation halfway across the world at no cost or very little cost, because of standards. So standards are actually a good thing, and it brings consistency of expectation on all parties, and it means that things become repeatable. So if you're following a common standard on each project, then you can use things that you did on previous projects again. So there's many reasons to look at standards and why to use them. But in terms of information management, we now have an international standard, a set of standards on how to manage information for the built environment sector, so for buildings and infrastructure, and that's ISO 19650. There's a number of parts to that standard. So part 1 covers the principles, part 2 covers the capital delivery phase, part 3 covers the operational phase. There's going to be a part 4 that deals with COBE, or the data exchange. That's still in development. So at the moment, it's a British standard, but it will be an ISO standard at some stage. Part 5 deals with data security. Part 6 will deal with health and safety information. Again, that one's still in development, so it's British standard at the moment. And another interesting standard is BS 8536, which is it's called soft landings, but it's a code of practice for designing and constructing buildings with performance and operations in mind. So it's a really good framework for developing projects, and I'd really recommend that people have a look at that. Obviously, as I said, we have standards for asset management, for project management, for organizational management, for environmental management, health and safety, facilities, etc. So all these standards are relevant, but in the middle, and I really see information management as being in the middle, because without good information, actually all of these other standards are very difficult to operate. And so I just wanted to point that out. But these are the relevant standards when it comes to information management. And from a project management point of view, for most people, that means the capital delivery phase of projects. So ISO 19650 Part 2 is the relevant standard. And I just want to point out what needs to happen from a project management point of view. So in terms of getting good outcomes on your projects. So the first thing is you have to select the right team. There's no point in appointing people to the project who are incapable of working in this way. You know, so there's some pre-qualification questions in relation to people's ability to participate on a project following these standards. The next part is the client or the building owner has to put together an exchange information requirements document. So it's clearly documented what the client wants. Now, many clients won't know how to do that, and that's where consultants or project managers can help the clients put those documents together, which really becomes like a rule book, if you like, for the rest of the project. There's some commercial agreements that are put in place. So we spoke earlier about using FIDIC and NEC and other types of contracts that don't allow for BIM. Well, the way you deal with that is through a BIM protocol, which is an addendum to those contracts that deal with the BIM issues. Somebody has to be put in charge of this information management process. So there's a scope of service for information management. There's some PI insurance issues to deal with, and a digital plan of work has to be put together. So that's important. That, you know, we remember that image you liked so much of the digital process and the virtual process. Like, you wouldn't attempt to build a physical building without a plan of work. So in the same way, you shouldn't attempt to build the digital version without a plan of work. Okay, the delivery team, so the designers and the contractors, have to produce a BIM execution plan in response to the exchange information requirement. So the BIM execution plan, there's a lighter version, which is a tender stage. So it's called a pre-contract BIM execution plan. And then when the team gets appointed, they produce a more detailed version called the post-contract BIM execution plan. The common data environment has to be put in place, and ultimately there's a deliverable. So we're not just thinking about the physical deliverable anymore. We're thinking about delivering a digital building, hopefully in advance of delivering the physical building. And that will include operational data and COBie, and be classified using Uniclass or some other classification system. So just as a graphic, this shows project managers the types of things that need to occur at the right time. So it's really odd. Like, we've seen projects that are halfway through and they have no exchange information requirements. So people are working away without knowing what they meant to deliver. You know, so the timing of some of these is really important. Or people are appointing architects and engineers and contractors to a project based on price only, without checking their capability. Yeah, and then you've agreed a price and a fee, and then you find out that they're incapable of working in this digital environment. And, you know, so these are important things. It's not the role of a project manager to do all these things, but it is your role, I would say, as a project manager, to make sure they get done. I mean, that's what project managers should be doing. So, yeah, so this is very much a project management issue. You know, not something that you just leave up to the architects or engineers. Okay, so just to kind of summarize some important considerations, no matter who you are on the call, let's say you are involved somehow in this information management workflow. You're receiving information from certain people. In doing your work, whatever that work is, you're producing information that other people are going to use. So you're probably not at the start, and you're probably not at the end either. So that's important to remember, that, you know, the information you produce will have some impact on somebody else down the road. So you should try as much as you can, particularly as a project manager, to influence the quality of information that both you will receive, but other people will receive. through standards and other things. And you should also try and influence the quality and the usefulness of the information that you produce. So take some personal responsibility as well for the information that you produce.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We spoke about this idea of the link between project outcomes and good information versus poor quality information. So just a quick reminder, good quality information, this is my definition, is correct, on time, easy to find and accessible.
Yeah.
And poor quality information is the opposite. You know, it's incorrect, it's late, it's difficult to find, and it's going to cause problems on your projects. And so also this link between the quality of information and, you know, that it's quicker and cheaper and safer and better to work with good quality information. So yeah, it's really strange. A lot of people have this attitude that doing things properly is going to cost more, but it's the opposite. You know, doing things, working with poor quality information is what actually slows you down and costs you more money and creates these dangerous situations and mistakes. Yeah, I think that's something that we all need to begin to think about and stop having these conversations and arguments about the cost of implementing these standards and BIM, because it's, yeah, the opposite is true. There's a huge cost to the industry and to society and to even individual businesses and people in working with poor quality information. So digital versus analog, we spoke about that. Analog information is slower to use, produce. Because it's slower, it tends to be less detailed or more abstract. So it doesn't give a full picture, if you like, of what we're trying to build. Digital information is quicker to produce. It's quicker to update. It's quicker to analyze or work with, and it tends to be more realistic. So in that video you showed there, Neil, you know, as the guy was saying, they've worked it out in this digital environment down to, you know, the last bolt, so that they know exactly how everything is going to fit together by the time it gets to site. You know, they're not there trying to saw through concrete and get things. Okay. I think it's also important to understand that digitization is happening whether you like it or not. You know, so it's not really a debate or should we be doing digitization. The industry is getting digitized. The question really is, are you being left behind, or, you know, or are you keeping up with what's happening? There's a strong push from the World Economic Forum and the EU Commission to drive productivity and quality. Now you might say, well, we don't operate in the European Union, you know, but you know, if you as a country, as a society, if you're not becoming more productive, you know,
absolutely,
you're not helping your own situation, even if you're not operating in the European Union. And it's useful to see what's driving this from the World Economic Forum's point of view, and it's really about the industry's ability to deliver better quality and cheaper and quicker construction to their markets. But it's also, I think this opens up opportunities. And with, you know, we had this discussion about COVID and remote working and the ability that we can be across the world. You know, if you have capability, you could be in Mauritius and working on projects in the UK.
Yeah.
You know, so because digitization is supporting remote working, cross-border trade, open markets, and particularly if you can be using these standards. So if you following the ISO 19650 standards, and you have the capability to work, you know, across borders, suddenly there's no barrier anymore, because there's huge demand all across the world for construction. So these are things to remember. What can you do as individuals to support digitization? Well, the first thing I would say to everybody is think about your own role and think of it in terms of being an information manager. So if you're an architect or an engineer or project manager or quantity surveyor, you know, you're involved in this information management process in some way, and to think about that and embrace that. Don't shy away from engaging in this digital information process, because that way you will get left behind. Okay, there's special duties, particularly under the ISO 19650 standard, for parties that take on the lead appointed role. So if you're the lead architect or lead designer or the main contractor, just be aware that you have some special duties under that in terms of the information management. And I would recommend that people don't give that away, because with responsibility comes agency, and your value and importance is with responsibility. So don't, as a professional, don't diminish your value by shying away from taking on this information management process. Okay, because otherwise you'll end up doing nothing. Like you've seen that with somebody mentioned earlier, architects used to be project managers and cost managers, and and then over time they just gave away these the agency of those until now they're left with doing the design, and that could diminish further for architects.
Absolutely.
It's something because as an architect, I really feel strongly about. I feel a lot of architects are saying, "Well, information management is not my business." I'll give that to somebody else. But of course, that's not true. As an architect, you control the design through information, and it's always been your role as an architect to sort of manage the design and the design information. So
okay, Ralph, let me just take a quick poll, because haven't got long to finish after your presentation. Let's take a breather quickly, and I've got 2 polls quickly to share with our participant here today. The first one is, how quickly do you think construction is adopting digital technologies on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is slow and 5 is rapid? So how quickly do you think the participant is adopting digital technologies? That's what I'm talking about. The construction is national, international, and worldwide. So 1 being really slow, but 5 we really gone on the pace. So how quickly do you think construction is adopting digital technologies on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is slow and 5 is rapid? We've only got 10 seconds before we stop. And yeah, so in a few seconds, we're going to stop that. And I'm just going to pick up Ralph's brain. So I'm just going to end polling now. Most of you have already voted, and I'm going to share the result. Ralph, what do you think, based on 1 being slow and 5? Where do you think we are ranked at the moment in terms of leading the way digitally?
Well, when you say we, are you talking about the construction industry in general, across the world? Across the world,
yeah, because the world has just voted.
Yeah,
and it's quite shocking statistic.
Yeah, well, I'd say, it's quite obvious that McKinsey report in 2017 on productivity that looked at all the sectors put construction second last to fishing or something. Yeah, so
fishing.
or hunting.
What an insult to us.
Yeah, and that was interesting to me, because everyone I know in construction has a computer. Yeah, so you say, well, surely we digitize. I'm writing emails. I'm using my computer to do my work. So how can we not be digitized?
Okay.
The problem is we print everything we produce, so we don't share data.
Let me share this with you, and you will see. So wow, 15% says obviously very slow. 32% says okay, we are getting there. 40% are obviously in the middle, so that's a good sign. 10% obviously we are pushing the way and leading the way, and it's 7%. Does that reflect what you've been thinking of?
I think so. There's pockets of excellence. There's some people and some companies and even some countries that are really moving ahead quickly. Okay, so there's not and it's interesting if you had to take those results and turn them sideways, what you would see is a normal distribution curve. So you have early adopters and innovators on the one side,
Yeah.
and on the other side you have laggards, and in the middle you have a sort of an early majority and a late majority, and yeah, that's the way things normally get distributed in adoptions. So
Okay.
yeah,
I've got one more, Paul. I've got one more before we obviously take off your finishing your slide. And this is a good one. Which of the following technologies are benefiting or are likely to benefit your operation, i.e. everybody's project? Again, one being the little benefit and 5 being the biggest benefit. So again, if you can just vote on that one, that'd be great. Which of the following technologies are benefit or likely to benefit on an operation of 1 to 5? So whichever percentage, whichever you think is actually taking over. I don't think we've got the 1 to 5 on this one, so I do apologize. So basically, which one of the technology there are leading the way, whether it's tablet, smartphone, video conferencing, design for manufacturing assembly, which we've seen on the lead and whole, 3D building, virtual and augmented reality, which again we saw, robotic and autonomous construction equipment, wearable technologies such as exoskeleton, which is picking up as well, exoskeleton and artificial intelligence. So I've got 5 seconds left before we end polling on that one. And please put your vote in before I stop. So here we go. And I'm just going to stop now and share the result with Raf. So Raf, as you can see already, we live with our tablet, we live with our phone. So 48% there is saying these are the tools that we use most.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, all these technologies you've mentioned are relevant to certain people. Obviously, if you're not working on a construction site, then exoskeletons and smart hard hats are probably not that relevant to you. But yeah, but they are relevant.
Raf, can you explain what exoskeleton mean for most of us who is probably new to this world?
Well, it's like a augmented skeleton that helps you lift heavy things without damaging your muscles or your back or anything like that. So it gives you like superpowers in a sense that it's like a robot that fits out over your body that helps you lift things or do things and takes away the strain that people have on construction sites. So smart hard hats are obviously embedding technology in your hard hat so that you can receive information directly to your eyes as you're moving around. So you don't have to unroll a drawing or walk with a roll of drawings under your arm and leaves your hands free to do other things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so Raf, take it away as we finish and then we'll conclude. Thank you very much indeed. We've got 2 more polls, but after your slides.
Yeah, okay. All right, so where did we got to? Okay, so the next point I want to make is, like, individually you need to take professional responsibility for the quality of information and outcomes. Stop blaming the client for not asking you to be a professional. Start doing what you're meant to be doing. And providing the best quality service for whatever it is you do. Okay, and even help your clients. So particularly those professionals that have some influence over the client, like project managers or lead designers, help your clients to understand why this is important if they want the best outcomes on their projects. And also, if you have some influence over the project team, sometimes you have to help the participants and the other contributors to also understand. So because building projects are team efforts, it's multiple people coming together, and the performance of one team member can affect the overall performance of the game. I think that's important to remember. I think we've forgotten that. People have sort of contracted into their silos, and all they think about is their job, and they don't care about the project, or they don't care about what other people are doing or how they're contributing. But I think we need to get back to this collaborative team effort, and collaboration came out as one of your biggest jobs, words there at the beginning. Help inform and determine what digital information is required. So, contribute to the standards and regulations, work with your professional bodies. If your country hasn't adopted standards, that's something professionals in that country can do, is work with your professional bodies and make sure your country doesn't get left behind, or your profession doesn't get left behind. And I would say that my best advice there to anybody is don't reinvent the wheel. So that these international standards are progressing and have progressed, and you could spend a lot of time coming up with your own standard, and then find that you can't work in other markets. So, I think professionals have a way that they can influence the market within their countries through their professional bodies and associations. Help make a positive impact on the challenges that we face in the construction. So at the very beginning, I said we have some major challenges. One is economics. The cost of building is too high. It's too expensive. So we can help by improving productivity and reducing the costs of construction. Sustainability is a massive challenge. Like we said at the beginning, construction is contributing 40% to the CO2, 40% to the energy use. We can do something about that by working with better information and doing more analysis, etc. The quality, we have to improve the standards. I mean, the whole issue of the Grenfell disaster, has been fascinating to watch, of how that occurred, that 70 people lost their lives because of somebody trying to reduce the cost of cladding, or it was just, I mean, it's a terrible story, but it's happening everywhere. Like, the quality of construction needs to be improved, and the safety of people has to be considered. And procurement, like, there's lots of challenges with procurement, and procurement's not going to change overnight, but definitely better quality information helps procurement. It doesn't hinder procurement. In fact, poor quality information is what hinders procurement. So by participating in digitization, you're actually making a difference to these things, and that's a good thing. So just before we go, I wanted to offer this to people. We offering a free program. It's called the BIM Coordinators Mentor Program. It's an online program. It's 10 hours of instruction. Myself and my fellow co-director, we've been doing this for 12 years. So we're taking this opportunity to share some of that experience and knowledge with people through this program. And this program is aimed at people, anybody in the AEC professions, so architects, engineers, contractors, project managers, facility managers, anybody who's participating in the built environment who wants to advance their career or their business in digital construction will find this useful. But of course, there's a particular focus on people who are willing to take responsibility to coordinate and manage this process. So that's why we've called it the BIM Coordinators Program, because it's for those people who are willing to take an active role in this information management process as a BIM manager or BIM coordinator. Yeah.
And Ralph, what I will also do, if you can send me the link, I will then send it over to all the participants once we've done. So if you can send me that slide, maybe I will write everything down. And I will share that to all of you. So don't worry about anything. Don't type it in one by one, GLE/forward. Don't worry about that. No. I will send that over to you guys. But then, Rob, this is a great deal. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, we're really happy to help. I mean, this is part of it. We just want to help. And can we have a big round of applause, everyone, for Ralph on that, for really, taking the next step. I mean, he shouldn't have done that, but 1 hour per day, over 10 days, that 10 hours of free training on BIM, and how many of you will be looking to connect. So I'll send that over tonight. If I'm still not sleeping, but we'll get that over to you before midnight. Yeah. Very good. So that's really what I wanted to cover. Just one slide about our company is just there's our contact details if you want to get in touch with us or even connect with us on LinkedIn. And we really,
enjoy helping people and moving this whole idea along. We also, I mean, we do, as a business, we provide consultancy, production, training, and support services to help the industry. So that's, we've been working with architects, engineers, contractors, building owners to implement what we've been speaking about on their projects or in their business, or even with individuals to advance their career. So thanks for your time, Anil, and I know we've probably gone over slightly, but happy to take any more questions.
Yeah.
Or...
So what we'll do, we'll run a few people. I'm glad to say 245 of you are still with us. I've got 10 minutes left, but we'll pick up some questions as well. But let me run this poll. You can stop sharing as well, Raf. And I'm going to share this with you. This is an interesting one, and I love this one. Managed to put this together. What would encourage you or your organization to invest more in BIM and digital technology? What would encourage you, your organization, to invest more in BIM and digital technology? Would love to hear from you on that. In terms of, is it more evidence of benefit? Is stricter enforcement of BIM requirement from the government, like, you know, imposing by the public sector, you know, 50–60% of the work all from the public sector, handover of digital asset information. At the end, we're all worried about O&M. Suddenly, we wish we could have BIM. And finally, COVID-19 is still with us. It's going to be us for a long time as well. Remote working continues as post-pandemic. So would COVID-19 really drive BIM this time? I think that'd be great. So already I can see sharing the link there as well for registration. So please do click on that one as well. So we've got, most of you have already voted, and I'm going to share the result. Ralph, quickly, what's your thought on that in terms of encouragement? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think people have to find the incentive for themselves, like to encourage themselves. You know, it's your business, it's your career, it's if you're not feeling encouraged, let's say if you're feeling reluctant or frustrated or whatever, what I would say is you need to go and do a little bit of research, or you know, find how this is going to help you personally, and how it's going to help your business, and how it's going to help your sector. And you know, so encouragement comes from within, I think.
Okay,
mostly.
So let me show the result quickly. And it's amazing, this one. The results are here. More evidence of benefits, 49%. Pushing from the government, 43%. In terms of handover of the digital asset, 29%. And COVID, you know, ironically, 42%. So sounds about right. Sounds about right, Ralph.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You know, in the UK, there's obviously a government-led program, and it took many years. I mean, they announced it in 2010. You know, and it took a number of years. But we didn't have that in Ireland. We didn't have the government at that stage pushing it. And what was interesting when we had conversations with people in the UK is people looked at the mandate as something negative, as like a regulation that's being imposed on them, you know. And the questions I would get is, well, Ralph, what's the minimum I can do to comply with this? And you know, I think that's the wrong reason to think about BIM and what it can do for you. Like, you should really be trying to think about the benefits and the productivity gains and the improvement in the way you work, and reducing the sort of tedious, mundane tasks that we do. And I think in Ireland, we had the people who really went with BIM in the early days were doing it for those reasons. They were doing it for making things better, not to do the minimum and just comply with the mandate. So there's a good and a bad side to government mandate.
Okay, so I've got a final poll before we conclude, and this is a good one. Before we let we've got about, you know, almost a few more minutes before we conclude and take some questions. And this is a good one, everybody. So I'm going to share that with you now. And okay, that's the question here. So be honest, based on the presentation today, are you motivated to take BIM to the next level in your company and industry? Certainly, I will, as a project manager, as an architect, you're a project manager, as a QS, you're a project manager, as an engineer, you're a project manager. Based on the presentation today, are you motivated to take BIM to the next level in your company? Fantastic. Most of you have already voted, and I'm now going to share the result. Ralph, what do you think? Do you think 2 hours and 30 minutes of talking would convince the participants today of really embracing BIM? What do you think?
I certainly hope so. That was the intention, to encourage people, and that's great.
I'm pleased to say 99% today would love to take BIM to the next level. Can we have a big round of applause for Ralph Montague from Ireland today? Please, please, please put your hands up. 99% will really definitely, that's the benefit of having you as a webinar, and you're going to give us more training as well, which is fantastic. So thank you very much, everyone. I think I'm really chuffed by that as well. 99%. There's only one person who said no, and maybe he's probably hungry and going for dinner, but no, next time we'll make sure we'll sort him out as well. So really awesome on this one. And we will just take, we'll come back to you on a few questions. I've got a few closing slides, Ralph. So let me just share that with everyone before we conclude the webinar. Right, so if you can see my slide, you can put your hands up as well. Thank you very much indeed as I conclude. So, right, so we've got that. I've got a quick video. It's quite an eye-opening. I don't know, have you seen that one, Ralph? I don't know if you've seen it, but I just want to show that to everybody before we really conclude. And it's really an eye-opener. So let me just make sure I've got everything closed. And if you do see the video again, please put your hands up for me to get back to you. So, right, let me share that. And off we go. Just making sure we've got that going. Just making sure I've got the sound. And off we go. Here we go. And if you can see that,
once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in: you. Right now, you are a central point in the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation. Well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. Think about self-driving cars or computers that can learn and think. The way we work will never be the same. The skills we need will be dramatically different. Winning or losing are now happening faster than ever before. So what's your response? How will you discover new opportunities in one of the most transformational times in human history? Are you driving change, or are you being driven by it? Disruption has become the new normal. With change, it's always gradually, then suddenly, well, things really have stopped happening gradually. This change is exponential. Everything that used to be dumb and disconnected is now wired and intelligent. Cars, cities, ports, farms, even our bodies will be wired with sensors and will talk to each other. These game changers are also combinatorial. They amplify each other, creating a perfect storm of change. Quantum computing fuels big data. The Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence and deep learning, which fuels robotics. However, anything that cannot be digitized or automated will become extremely valuable. Human-only traits such as creativity, imagination, intuition, emotion, and ethics will be even more important in the future, because machines are very good at simulating, but not at being. Yes, robots and software will do some of our work, but this will allow us to focus on things that cannot be automated. To imagine change squared, you've got to start engaging more with what might be, not just with what is. Immerse yourself in the immediate future, 5 to 7 years out from today. We need to go beyond technology and data to reach human insights and wisdom. Technology represents the how of change, but humans represent the why. The future is about holistic business model. The opportunity is to be liquid, to learn just in time, not just in case, not single improvements, but complete transformations, not individual systems, but new ecosystems. Humanity is where true and lasting value is created. We will engage, relate, and buy things because of the experiences they provide, because of their transformative power. The future doesn't just happen, the future gets happened. The new way to work is to embrace technology, but not to become it. The future is in technology, yet the bigger future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead from here.
Okay, so as you can see, a very powerful video there as well. And before we get back to Ralph, so thank you very much indeed for that one. I just wanted to touch on now as well. This is a slide I put it together in terms of construction leadership. We've got so many things happening in terms of when we were in the first industrial revolution to now the fourth revolution. And you can see there digital engineering, BIM sensors, exoskeleton that Ralph mentioned, VR, VAR from football, big data, blockchain technology, 3D printing, robotics, Uber, drones, circular economy, AI, Internet of Things, and also digital leadership. That's why we need people like you watching today to become digital leaders. Final survey we've done, 99% of you would like to take BIM to the next level. I just want to share this book with you. I read this book a few months ago and I loved it. And it talks about when team members are remote, they need to be self-motivated to keep working. No one can glance over to see what they're doing. Also, it makes sense to give them autonomy on they carry out their tasks. Engaging people's heart and mind is key to keeping people feeling part of the team. A style that shares the wider purpose of the work and allow the people to do their best and develop mastery will motivate people further. I love this book. Definitely look out for this. It's called Virtual Leadership by Penny Pullen. Before we get back to Ralph, on Friday, we have an amazing CPD from Major Charlotte, a first in Africa, a CPD webinar talk by a British soldier, Major Charlotte Hayes, and she's a leader, chartered engineer from SIPSI, and she's serving the British Army. So we're humble honored to have her, just like Ralph here today. And finally, before I go to Ralph, keep on learning. This is an extract from a book which I got from social media. I've read a few books of Robin Sharma as well. And Robin Sharma says, I remember when I was a lawyer, just starting my professional career, I asked the top lawyer at the firm what I needed to do to ensure a sustained career in law. I've never forgotten his reply. Robin, be so knowledgeable, competent, and brilliant at what you do that this firm can't run without you. Become indispensable. And that was an advice which Robin said is spectacular. And he also goes on to say, awareness precedes choice, which precedes result. As you learn what the best do, you will develop new awareness. With better awareness, you will make better choices. And with better choices, you're certain to see better results. Invest in learning and getting your skill to world class is the smartest investment you will ever make. Master your craft and you will get to greatness. So Ralph, thank you very much indeed. We've got to 2.5 hours. We'll pick up a few words from you. Ralph, I mean, extremely impressed by you being a role model, a BIM champion, and your passion for so many years is truly, truly, you know, spectacular. Your kindness, energy, share willingness, and determination to keep sharing consistently your experience, wisdom, knowledge, and for being a grower. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone, for Ralph there? Fantastic. And so from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of all participants today, thank you for giving back your time. I know it was really quick. I contacted you last week. You said, let's do it. Time, obviously, fantastic. So take care, be safe. I'm just going to go back to Ralph now and pick up some questions as well. So Ralph, there's lots of questions, but I'm sure you can pick that on your mentoring as well. What's your thought and your word of wisdom to us as I read a few of the feedback as well we got, Ralph?
Yeah, well, my thought is keep going, keep changing. you know, like those 2 videos you showed, and well, the extract of the book, it's about change. Change is happening, and you're either moving with it, or it's moving against you. And yeah, so just keep moving, keep changing. There's a quote that I really like from Darwin. It says, you know, the strongest of the species that survives is not the, I'm sorry, it's not the strongest that survives, but the one that's most adaptable to change. You know, so yeah, so just encourage people to not ignore this, and not be scared by this, but to embrace it and to move with it.
Let's pick up a few questions quickly. There's a question from Amori. Amori says, the BIM coordinated training that you will be given, is it based on software, Revit? What is it, roughly?
It's not based on software. It's about the process, mostly about the process. It's set out in the ISO 19650 standard. We will, as part of it, demonstrate different softwares just so people understand what they are, but it's not software training. It's training that's focused on the process.
Okay, and he also says, where can we get standards like, you know, Kirby or codes of standards? Is it available for download? Where can we get those? Is it free?
Standards aren't free, unfortunately. So you can get them from your standards authority in your country, or sometimes universities and libraries have the standards available for you to use, but unfortunately, standards are things you have to purchase for a business. But most businesses in construction would have a subscription to a standards body, or so you should be able to get them through either that or your university or library.
Okay, thank you very much. I will pick up 5 more minutes questions if it's okay with you, Ralph.
Yeah.
I've got 5
Sure,
minutes
no
left. There's a question there which was very interesting. I'm just picking up the question now. In terms, how far has BIM reduces conflict leading to claim in the, because you know we are very claim conscious. The industry is litigious, if I may say so. But is BIM helping to reduce conflict and lead to more better collaboration?
Definitely. So the ease of use of people engaging with the information earlier and avoiding problems and avoiding disputes is definitely being helped by BIM. Obviously, there are some conflicts that are being created by BIM, because particularly where people have a different understanding of BIM and the expectations, you know, it's creating some new conflicts. People will always be in some sort of conflict. But proper project management will avoid that. You know, if things are set out clearly at the beginning of a project and everybody knows what they expect to do, you know, you'll have less claims.
And there was a question from Rupesh, who is an experienced civil engineer, and he says, would you consider Pseudobim as a stepping stone for consultant who is getting started on BIM, or is that a wrong approach altogether?
I'd say it's the wrong approach. You know, it just costs you time and money, and it creates problems. So I don't know why you would. I don't know how that's a stepping stone. You know, I would invest a bit of time into developing your skills and knowledge, and then do it properly. Yeah, it's better to do things properly once than to do it incorrectly and then do it again.
And there was a question as well as, can a contractor build program of work through a BIM model?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Can a contractor produce a program of work through the BIM, you know, collaboration tool?
Yeah, we spoke about the 4D BIM. So
yeah.
That's basically about taking a program of work in whatever you use, Microsoft Project or Primavera or whatever, and connecting it to the model, and so that you can visualize over time how the building will come together, which you showed in that video. So,
yeah.
So yes. Yeah.
Okay, we've got exactly 5 minutes left because we're stopping at 45. Nabil's got a question on education side of things. I'm an architect planning to pursue a master's in BIM. Does the course need to be accredited by a specific body to be recognized? and able to practice as a BIM consultant. Is there any master's program you will recommend? What's your thought?
Well, there's a lot of master's programs in the UK, there's in Ireland, in across Europe, in other countries. Whether they are accredited by any particular organization, well, to be a master's program, it obviously has to be accredited by the educational bodies in that country anyway. But yeah, I don't actually know the answer whether those are accredited by any particular organizations.
Yeah, okay. And just the common question, is BIM applicable only to building, or is it applicable to infrastructural work like bridges, roads, and things?
Yeah, it's applicable to anything in the built environment. So I think, yeah, the acronym Building Information Modeling sort of suggests it's only buildings, but of course, infrastructure, roads, bridges, water treatment plants, all sorts of things fall into that category of the built environment. So it's applicable to anybody who's operating in the built environment and the things they're operating with.
And there's a question from Anton, who's a senior architect. It's quite a good one. He says, manufacturing analogy is quite interesting. Typically, if you want to buy a bespoke car, it will be fantastically expensive. Is that the same with building? Because all buildings are bespoke. Surely, what's your comment?
My comment, that's a very common question, that you can't do a comparison between manufacturing and building because each building is bespoke. But that's not entirely true, because the things that we make buildings from, the components and the materials, those aren't bespoke. Like to sell a material or a product on the market, it has to go through rigorous development. And so, if you think of buildings and infrastructure as collections of components, well, the only thing that's bespoke is the way they assemble, rather than the components themselves. So I think that's a very useful way to think about buildings and infrastructure as collections of repeatable components.
Yeah.
And because, like, if you take a school, like,
Yeah.
schools have classrooms and staff rooms, and now every school can look slightly different, but it has sort of repeatable components, and that's where there's a big push particularly in the UK and other countries, to design for manufacture and modern methods of construction, where we stop thinking about assembling buildings on site as if each building was bespoke, but we think about the manufacture of buildings, where parts of those buildings can be manufactured off-site and brought to site and assembled. So this thinking about designing with the manufacture of buildings in mind is what's really changing the outlook, I think, for construction.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much indeed. We've reached to 2 hours and 45 minutes. This is where we're going to issue our certificate attendance. So please email me your feedback and the email as well. So it's been great. Lots of feedback as well to say thank you to you, Ralph. So guys, I can't thank you enough. Can you put a big round of applause for Ralph from Ireland for a 2 hour and 45 minutes of talk. It's been amazing. I loved it. We had 500 participants registered for this talk. It's been incredible. So thank you, everyone. Can we put a big round of applause for Ralph from Ireland for spending his time, effort, and knowledge and also the free training that for the 10 hours. So thank you very much indeed. Ralph, a lot of young people are watching today. What's your advice to the young millennium really looking to embrace that technology, and let's do it?
Yeah, the construction sector is an exciting sector, would be my first piece of advice. Like, we're literally building the world. Like, if you had the choice of building a new video game or computer game or building the world, building the world is really exciting. And with technology now, the industry is becoming less of a sort of labor intensive, dirty, muddy boots, dominated by men type of industry. And there's so many opportunities to engage with this industry in the technology side, and more the technology is going to increase, and the sort of labor is going to decrease. So if you're focusing on the technology side, the market is opening up and it's becoming really interesting, exciting, and it's never going away, because we continuously need infrastructure and buildings for people, for schools, hospitals. It's, you know, other things will come and go, but the building sector is really exciting. So I'd encourage young people to look at
Ralph,
it.
fantastic advice. Like I said to you, I'm humble, honored, and privileged to have you today. I can't thank you enough. I'm sure we'll do something in the future as well. But look, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart and for all the participants today. Ralph, thank you once again. We'll keep it. Please send me all your feedback, and then I'll be able to share to Ralph. And Ralph, you send me an email with regard to the, I know you sent the link, but if you can send me an email, please, and then I'll share
send you the, I'll send you the slides as well if you want to share the slides with people.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. And we'll have a YouTube recording as well for those of you who want to catch up on that. Thank you, Ralph. Ralph,
thank you, Anil. Appreciate it.
Humble. Thank you. Take care, everyone, and be safe and take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Anil.